Now, if you're planning on buying a home in Minnesota in 2025 or 2026, then you definitely need to watch this video before you get started, because things may be a lot different than you think they are. What's going on, guys? Brandon Archie here, aka your favorite Minnesota Realtor, and today I'm going to be covering the home buying process in Minnesota, the current housing market, as well as some things about the process that you may not have known about. And make sure to stay till the end of the video, because I'm also going to be sharing when the best time to buy a home in Minnesota is, as well as giving my predictions about what I think buyers and sellers should expect in 2026. Now, let's get started. Now, based on the conversations that I've had with people over the last few weeks, it's obvious that there are a lot of common misconceptions about the home buying process. So quickly, let's address the top 3 common misconceptions about buying a house in Minnesota. Now, the first one is probably the one that I get the most, and that is overestimating how long the entire process actually takes. Now, most people think that the home buying process is this long, drawn-out process that takes months, but the actual truth is, hypothetically, if you were to find a home that you like today, you could legit have the keys and be moving in as little as 30 days. Forgot to put my phone on vibrate. Which leads me to misconception number 2, and that is thinking that the pre-approval application will hurt your credit score. Now, this is one that people always hesitate on doing because they think that doing the application will hurt their score. But the truth is, it doesn't. Filling out the pre-approval application is only the preliminary step of checking your credit report and credit history, which is only a soft pull and does nothing to your score. Now, what most people don't realize is that when you fill out the pre-approval application, you're not actually applying for the loan at that time. That part doesn't come until much later, until you actually have a home under contract, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. And the third misconception applies to most people moving here from other states, and that is thinking that you can't qualify for a mortgage because you just started a new job. Now, this one is probably the most important one to understand because the vast majority of people moving here are probably going to be starting new jobs. Well, the good news is, as long as that job is in the same industry as the jobs you've previously had, then there is no lag time on how soon you can apply. For instance, let's say you've been in management for the last 5 years and you start a new job here in Minnesota that's also in management. Then you can still get pre-approved, and all you would need to show the lender is the offer letter from the company showing what your annual salary is. That's it. Okay, so now that we got those out of the way, hopefully some of you that are watching this feel like buying a home is a lot more attainable than you originally thought it was. So leave a comment below if you believed any of these misconceptions prior to watching this video. And now let's move on to the home buying process. So step 1 in the home buying process is to reach out to a realtor to schedule a meeting to talk about what it is you're looking for so that you can put together a plan of action that best fits your situation and timeline. Now, the reason why this step is so important is because you need to know what you're getting into and have a plan put together so that you can make your process as smooth as possible. Thought I wasn't going to do it, did you? Now, everyone's situation is going to be slightly different, which is also what makes the home buying process slightly different as well. Now, we'll go over all of your options so that you'll feel confident that you understand what's going on and get all of your questions answered. Now, if you want to schedule that meeting with me via Zoom, you can shoot me an email at brandon@archiehomesgroup.com, or you can use the Calendly link that will be pinned in the comments to put a meeting on my calendar directly. The next step is the pre-approval, which is the easiest step and should take less than 15 minutes to do. Now, this is also one of the most important steps because you can't submit an offer without it. Now, this will also determine how much you qualify for and will help you determine how much you should spend based on what you want your monthly payments to be. Now, again, the pre-approval can be done online and takes less than 15 minutes. It's just a basic form that asks you for simple information like how much you make and how much you want to spend on the home. From there, the lender will take a look at everything you've submitted and give you a pre-approval amount based on the info given, which takes about 24 hours, but sometimes it can be a lot less than that. Now, one thing that people may not know about the pre-approval process is that the lender you choose really matters and can shape the overall home buying experience for you. Now, I always recommend using a local lender versus a big bank because local lenders tend to be more flexible with qualification requirements. Now, it's very common for someone to get pre-approved for a higher amount with a local lender versus using a big bank, but the biggest benefit of using a local lender instead of a big bank is the overall communication. Now, when working with a local lender, you're able to contact them with questions 7 days a week, whereas big banks usually only work regular business hours. And we all know that real estate mostly happens on evening and weekends. So what do you think is going to happen when you want to submit an offer on a Saturday night, but you can't get a hold of your lender until Monday morning? But don't worry, if you're looking for a recommendation, I do work with a ton of great local lenders that can help you get that process started. Now, as far as costs go to buy a home, you have 4 main costs, which are earnest money, home inspection, down payment, and closing costs. And I'll talk about each of those costs in the correlating sections of the home buying process coming up. But first, if you are finding this video helpful so far, then please make sure to hit that like button for me, and also please consider subscribing. So now that you have your pre-approval, the rest of the home buying process is pretty much smooth sailing and is as simple as looking at homes until you find the one that you want. Now you'll have access to emails that will send you homes that fit your criteria daily, and when you find homes that you want to go see, it's as simple as sending me the address and we can go take a look at them. Now one quick note that I do want to make, more so for the people that are relocating here from other states, is that you may have an instance where you find something on the market that you like, but you're not able to physically see the home. Now there are still ways to get all the info that you need, which I went more into depth on how I help people in those instances in my relocating to Minnesota video, which if you haven't seen that already, you can watch here. So this is the part where you've fallen in love with the house and you're ready to write an offer on it. So the offer writing process is where you and I will sit down and talk about what we should offer on the home. Now, a lot of people think that writing an offer just comes down to who has the highest price, but there's actually a lot more things to consider than that. Now, there are factors like how much of a down payment you're putting down, how soon you can close on the home, do you have another house to sell before you can buy, as well as other variables. And this is where your favorite Minnesota Realtor comes in, because these are all things that you don't have to rack your brain trying to figure out on your own, because we'll talk everything over and I'll help guide you on what makes a good offer and put you in a position to win. Now, once your offer is accepted, then that's when we head into the next 30 days prior to closing, and I'll briefly touch on each of those steps. Now, the first cost associated with buying a home and the very first cost after getting your offer accepted is earnest money. Now, earnest money gets paid by the buyer and it gets put into a trust account after your offer is accepted, which is typically about 1% of the purchase price. Now, earnest money is like a good faith payment that you make to show the seller that you're committed to buying the house, and the earnest money gets credited towards your down payment at closing. So for instance, if the home that you bought is $300,000, then the earnest money that you would submit is $3,000. After earnest money is sent, then you'll schedule your home inspection. Now, this is the part of the home buying process that's probably going to differ a bit compared to other states. Now, as far as how much the home inspection costs, it's typically going to be somewhere between $400 to $500, but it's going to greatly depend on the size of the home, and there's also add-on services that you can include as well for an additional cost, like sewer scopes, radon tests, and others. Now, during the home inspection, the inspector is going to look at basically everything in the home to make sure that everything works and check the overall condition of things. After your home inspection, you'll get the full report of everything the inspector looked at, including pictures that makes it easier to understand what they're talking about. Now, the main difference between home inspections here in Minnesota versus other states is that during this period, you have one of three options, assuming that something big came up on the home inspection report that needs to be fixed. Number one, you can ask the seller to fix the issue. Number two, you can ask for a price reduction to cover the cost for you to fix it. Or absolute worst case scenario, you can cancel the deal and get your earnest money back. Now, obviously number three is more so for huge inspection items that have the potential to make living in the home unsafe, such as like a major foundation issue. Now, once everything is over, the home inspection and negotiations are finished, then this is where you actually apply for the loan. Now, the lender will be asking you for documentation like recent pay stubs and tax records so that they can submit your loan application. Now, this process is usually what makes up that 30-day period from writing the offer until closing. Now, during this time, it's really, and I mean really, important to manage your finances and not do anything out of the ordinary until after closing. Like not opening or closing any credit lines, don't buy a new car, don't spend thousands of dollars on furniture, because these things can and will affect your eligibility, so you want to wait until after you close on the house to do any of them. Now, on closing day, you'll show up at the title company where you'll be signing everything for your new home. Now, you'll also need to bring a cashier's check for the down payment and closing costs, which your lender would have told you prior to closing how much to bring. The closing will typically take 30 minutes or less to do, and once it's over, you actually get the keys to your house and you can immediately move in. Now, your down payment amount is going to mostly depend on what type of loan you're using, and the three main types of loans are conventional, FHA, or VA. Now, I'm not going to go into depth of the differences between these, but if you want to know more, then just leave a comment below and I'll explain that there. But for the sake of keeping this video simple, the most common down payment percentage is going to be somewhere around 3% of the purchase price. So again, using that $300,000 house as an example, your down payment in this instance would be $9,000. And then for the last expense with buying a home, you have your closing costs. Now, closing costs are actually a bunch of different costs that are put together as one lump sum that gets paid at closing. Now, closing costs includes things like your homeowner's insurance, your property taxes, lender fees, title fees, and things like that. Now, the general rule of thumb is when it comes to trying to calculate closing costs would just be to plan for another 3% of the purchase price. Now, there are some ways to get out of having to pay closing costs, like having the seller pay for them, but I can cover that in another video, or we can talk about the specifics of that when we have our initial meeting. Now, there are also down payment assistance programs out there as well that offer money that can be used towards closing costs and down payment. Now, you may or may not have noticed that I did not include realtor fees in there, and that is because as a buyer, you typically include realtor fees in your offer to the seller. So in other words, you're asking the seller to pay for your realtor so that you don't have to. All right, so now that we talked about the home buying process in general, now let's talk about when the best time to buy a home in Minnesota is. And for this part, it may just be best to show you. Now, Minnesota has all 4 seasons, and it just so happens that the one that's coming up now is winter. But I say all this to say is that Minnesota's housing market is going to be very seasonal when compared to other states around the United States, especially the ones that are warmer all year round. Now, what you're currently looking at on my screen is the median sales price in the Twin Cities over each month over the last 3 years. Now, as we look at this chart, you can see that it pretty much does the same thing every single year. Prices hit their bottom in the market around January, and then they start to shoot straight up in March in response to the spring market. Now, it just so happens that January also is the coldest month of the year in Minnesota, so it's no surprise that not a lot of people want to move during that time. But if you are looking for the best deal, then there's no denying that the best time to save thousands of dollars in our housing market is anywhere between November and February. So if you are one of those people that were planning on buying a home this spring, I would highly suggest that you reconsider that and start a couple months earlier if your timeline allows that, especially if you want to save some money. Now, as far as my predictions for 2026, I think it's going to be a much busier year than 2025 was. Now, interest rates spent the majority of the year hovering at around 7%, but even despite that, the median sales price still rose to a high of $400,000 versus only $390,000 in 2024. Now, the number of closed sales was also up 10% when compared to the same time last year, and now that interest rates are finally making their way back down, more and more buyers are starting to get off the fence. Not to mention the number of people selling their homes also went up 6%, leading to more inventory for buyers to choose from. Also, I think you should be on the lookout for builders to continue offering deep discounts for buyers to go new construction. There are so many new communities popping up all over the Twin Cities, and there are currently builders offering interest rates as low as 3%. Now, in this instance, new construction can even be cheaper than buying an existing home. Now, overall, the Twin Cities has seen consistent growth year over year, even despite all of the headlines. So if you are thinking about moving here and you want to save some money, then I would highly suggest starting anytime between now and February. Now, while you're trying to figure out your timeline, in the meantime, if you are looking for a list of some of the most affordable cities in the Twin Cities, then you should watch this video next.